Hello, everyone. Gonna play some standard this week. Arguably the best deck. I mean, you could say it's arguably, but this deck is kind of killing it. So, won the Pro Tour after day one of Grand Prix Toronto. It was 39 of the top 100 decks, which is just absurd to me. A couple copies made the top 8, and I liked Doug Potter's list the best. He had a couple cool things going on. First of all, his deck was just super clean. There were just like no one-ofs. It just looked like he figured out what the best cards were, and by he, I mean that he got his deck from Sammy T. But regardless, this deck looks super clean. The thing that I like the most is the addition of Den Protector instead of the Thraben Inspectors. So aside from minor cosmetic changes, I'm basically just playing his deck. So yeah, Pro Tour winning deck. Deck is great. Is kind of like this mid-rangey beatdown deck that is all about assembling a board presence, both with Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, and Gideon, Ally of Zendikar. So we got a little Zendikar theme going on. Basically, just make some tokens, pump them up with either Gideon or Nissa, and then you take advantage with either the Anthem effects with Secure the Wastes and Hangerback Walker, or use the tokens to transform this Westvale Abbey here. So Den Protectors are pretty cool in that it gives you like another big card, whereas Thraben Inspector was this thing that allowed you to get on the board a little bit earlier and gave you a little bit more of a way to like use your mana better, you know, just if you ever had 2 mana lying around, you could like pop the clue and stuff. So the Inspector was effectively a free card just because it replaced itself. And it's nice with the Nissa minus and the Gideon emblem, and it's also pretty good against the human decks, but the human decks are kind of falling out of the metagame a little bit here. Den Protector, like I said, is basically just another big card in that it lets you rebuy like a Dromoka's Command or a Gideon that you made an emblem with. It's also really cool that you have 4 Oath of Nissas that are legendary, so if you ever draw 2, one's go to the graveyard, you can Den Protector 1 back and just go digging a little bit, which is pretty nice. And also, just the evasion is super huge, especially in the mirror matches, and especially with basically 12 ways to pump up your Den Protector. I think that is just very, very powerful. It gives you a way to attack Planeswalkers and actually break through these stalled board states, which I think is pretty important. The one minor spew that I think Doug had on his list was that he still had 7/4, 7 planes, and without Thraben Inspector as a 1-drop, I think it's pretty easy to just cut a planes, because you can't keep a hand with all white mana. Like a hand that has all planes and Westvale Abbeys, you can't keep. But a hand that is like Forest and Westvale Abbey, you can keep because of Oath of Nissa. So I don't see any reason to have like a split mana base. I do think that having at least one more Forest than Plains is good. With 4 Oath of Nissa, it's also possible that like you should just cut another Plains for a Forest, because Oath of Nissa helps you cast your Gideon, and then you're only worried about casting Archangel Avacyn on 5. So that might be another thing. We'll see how it plays out. I mean, you definitely want an early Plains for Dromoka's Command, and maybe for Secure the Wastes and for sideboard cards, but other than that, like, you don't necessarily need white mana early, so I'm kind of looking at just getting like another Forest in here. We'll see how 8 and 6 plays out, though. Other than that, some people are doing some different stuff. They have Lambhold Pacifist main deck, which, again, with Nissa, Gideon, and Dromoka's Command, it's pretty easy for that thing to just not have a drawback. But at the same time, I just feel like Den Protector is doing that job a little bit better, as long as you don't need the early blocker necessarily. It is worth noting that Pacifist on its own is able to take out a Gideon, which is pretty nice, assuming you have something like Dromoka's Command. Like, they'll go Gideon, make a Knight, and then you just command, put a counter on your thing, kill their Knight token, kill their Gideon, which is a pretty nice sequence. But I do think the Den Protector is just going to be a little bit more valuable overall, especially if the metagame is a little bit more of like these black-based Languish decks. So I like this deck, like this main deck. It does look super clean, which I'm pretty excited about. And I don't know, like there are certainly a lot of different things you could be doing. Like, you could play more Declaration's main deck. Declaration is certainly good in a world of tokens. Is also good at killing Kalitas, which is kind of like the only way for the control decks to really get traction against you. So I could see having like a Stone or 2 main. Command can certainly kill Kalidas, especially with Gideon or Avacyn, but it is kind of tough. They're trying to make sure that doesn't happen. So Stone is just a nice, clean answer. So either way, I like having some Stones in the board. A couple Hallowed Moonlights, reasonable in the mirror match. If you just have the mana open and you want to make it so they don't get a plant or they don't get a knight off their Gideon, or they're trading away their hanger back in combat or something, or you just stop them from using Secure the Waste, I think that's a pretty good exchange for you. Also quite good against Collected Company, and it's kind of nice just because if you're playing a deck that is trying to get on board and trying to attack your opponent, they're often going to have to save their Collected Companies for your turn to try and get a use out of Bounding Crassus. If they hit that off Collected Company, just slow you down a little bit, and then that just kind of opens them up to getting Moonlighted, which is nice. So I like having a couple Hallowed Moonlights just to keep them honest. Tragic Arrogance is very good in the mirrors, very good against the human decks. Linval the Preserver, just a nice card to have, mostly when you're on the draw against other board decks that are trying to position themselves on board, like Band Company and Humans. A couple Evolutionary Leaps, turn your plants into actual threats, which is pretty nice, especially now that we have Den Protector. Makes Evolutionary Leap basically able to find stuff that is not just specifically creatures, because if you leap into a Den Protector, then you can get a Planeswalker off it, or a removal spell, or something like that. Added some Clipwings to the sideboard over Lantern Scouts. I don't feel like Lantern Scout really accomplishes much, because it's these matchups are never about actual racing, because generally just someone has a bigger board than their opponent, and just gaining, even if it's 10 life or whatever, isn't really going to help if you're just behind on board. So I don't really like the idea of playing Lantern Scout. I do like Clip Wings just because Avacyn is a big deal, Ormidal is a big deal, and Dragonlord Ojutai won the Grand Prix, so I think that deck is going to pick up in popularity. So I think Clip is a pretty nice card to have in your sideboard. And then the one card I didn't talk about yet is Angelic Purge, which was kind of an oddball in the sideboard, but this is a card that can come in against the Seasons Past decks, I think. I'm pretty sure this is why it's here. Both Seasons Past and the Goggles decks, as a way to kill both Kalidas and Virulent Plague, or World Breaker and Pyromancer Goggles. So I assume that's why it's there. I mean, that is what I would treat the card as, but both those decks seem to be waning in popularity, so I trimmed on a Purge also. But yeah, pretty much Doug Potter's list. Deck looks really good. I'm surprised that no one has really done a lot of content on this deck. Although if you are interested in this deck, definitely check out Mike Sigrist's last 2 articles on Star City Games. He played at the Grand Prix, went 12-3, I think, only losing to mirror matches. So I think that's just kind of a rousing endorsement for the deck. And plus, he was the person behind the team that made the deck and made the Pro Tour, or won the Pro Tour. Sorry. So yeah, his insights pretty valuable. Articles are great. So definitely check those out, and let's battle.